Hey everybody, Steve here at Forest Lawn in the Hollywood Hills, and I'm here to visit a gravesite and tell you the awful story, the tragic story about a relatively young man who was murdered right here in front of his mother's sarcophagus or tomb or crypt. I don't know how this is the first time I've heard about this story, but this happened back in 1991, and this is the first time I've heard about this horrible, tragic death right here in a cemetery. Now, some of you may remember a couple of years ago, I visited a forest lawn in Glendale and went to the grave of a man who was also murdered at his mother's gravesite and then buried with her. And the same with this man. This man was murdered and then a few days later buried with his mom in this beautiful sarcophagus. What a strange coincidence that both of these men were visiting their mother's gravesites when they were murdered, and they were both up here in Los Angeles. I don't think this is very common at all. It's just, I think, just a real fluke. So let me tell you the story while I walk over to his gravesite and show you where they're laid to rest. It's a very, very beautiful section, but I can see how it could have been kind of remote. I mean, it's not really a remote section. It's usually pretty busy. There's usually a lot of people around, but he was visiting his mother's gravesite apparently before work one morning early. The cemetery opens at 8 o'clock, so it was early in the morning. I think it was Labor Day weekend, and so maybe there weren't as many staff members around, and it was early in the morning, and the cemetery gets very, very busy later in the day, but not always as busy in the morning. So let me tell you what happened to Onnik Kouyoumdjian. And I'm probably mispronouncing his name. He was Armenian. He was born June 16th, 1938, and died August 31st. So I guess that was Labor Day weekend, 1991. He was only 53 years old. He was the founder and operator of Onnik Shoes in North Hollywood. He started the business back in 1972 and was very, very successful. Had a very high-end line of shoes. There's a website still. You can visit the website, and they're still selling very high-end shoes. I believe they're made in Italy. And sadly, this murder is still unsolved, at least as far as I can tell. I searched everywhere online, and I couldn't tell if the killer had ever been found. The investigators interviewed over 200 people. They believe it was a professional hit. He was shot multiple times in front of his mother's gravesite. And 2 years after his death, when there were still no leads and the killing had gone unsolved, the family offered a $100,000 reward. But again, as far as I can tell, I don't think the murder was ever solved, making it even that much worse. He was a bachelor, and he had just purchased a multi-million-dollar home not far away from here, up in the hills overlooking the valley. Very beautiful home with a pool, a mansion. And he told his friends that he was too afraid to move in because he lived alone. And he knew that somebody was following him, and he didn't feel safe, and he felt like living in this big house by himself would make him feel even less safe. So he was delaying moving into his new home, apparently, knowing that someone was following him, and he felt like he was in danger. He had told friends before he was killed. He had been involved in a very lengthy and I guess very nasty lawsuit with a former business partner at the time. And of course, the business partner was questioned as well by the police and the investigators, but there just wasn't enough information or just not enough evidence indicating that he had been involved in any way. So as far as I know, his murder has never been solved. And this was back in 1991. That's just adding insult to injury when someone is just brutally murdered like that, and then their murder is never solved. And it sure wasn't because he didn't have the funds. His family didn't have the funds to pay for the best investigation they could. I'm sure they probably hired a private investigator and did everything in their power to bring the killer to justice, but as far as I can tell, that never did happen. If any of you happen to know if the case was ever solved, please share with us in the comments. It would be really nice to know. I think all of us would like to know that something just tragic like this, that at least the killer was brought to justice. So even though he wasn't really famous, I mean, he was well known, and his shoes were very well known while he was alive. He wasn't your typical famous person who we often find and visit here in Forest Lawn in the Hollywood Hills, but sadly he became famous in a way no one wants to. He became famous because he was murdered, and famous because of how he was murdered. His murder made headline news, but sadly, that's not a way anyone wants to become famous. So as always, thank you for joining me on another trip to the cemetery. If you have any information about his death, any more than what I've shared, please share it with us in the comments section, and I'll hope to see you all on my next trip.